I didn't cry when my brother sent the text. That part still surprises me when I think about it now. It was a Tuesday in February, the kind of cold that makes the air feel personal, like it has something against you specifically. I was sitting in the parking lot of a Service Ontario office in Mississauga, engine running, waiting for the heat to kick in before I went inside. My phone buzzed on the passenger seat. I looked down and saw it was from my brother, which was already unusual because he almost never texted me directly. He usually went through our mother, like a middle schooler passing notes. The message said, "We've talked about it and we've decided we need space from you. Please don't reach out to any of us for a while. We'll contact you when we're ready." I read it twice. Then I set my phone face down on the passenger seat and went inside to handle my paperwork. I want to be honest about why I wasn't more upset in that moment. It wasn't because I didn't care. It's because I had been quietly watching this coming for about 8 months. When you spend long enough waiting for a wave to hit, by the time it actually does, you're already bracing. You've already calculated the damage. You already know which way you're going to fall. What they didn't calculate, what none of them had apparently stopped to think about, was that I was, at that exact moment, 3 weeks away from finalizing I signed the COSOR paperwork on my parents' mortgage refinancing. Let me back up. Not far. Just enough so this makes sense. My parents immigrated from the Philippines in the early 90s. They worked hard, saved carefully, bought a house in Brampton that they'd been in for almost 30 years. A couple of years ago, interest rates did what interest rates did, and their renewal came up at a number that made the monthly payments genuinely difficult. My father had retired. My mother was working part-time. Their income on paper wasn't strong enough to qualify for the rate they needed on their own. I was 29, working as a project coordinator for a construction management firm, making decent money, with a clean credit history I had spent years building carefully. My parents asked if I would co-sign. I said yes. Of course, I said yes. It was my parents' house. I wasn't going to let them lose it over a paperwork problem I could solve. What followed was 6 months of documentation, pay stubs, T4s, employment letters, bank statements going back 2 years, a statutory declaration, 2 rounds of requests from the lender for additional information, 1 appraisal that came in slightly low and had to be contested, and approximately 40 hours of my personal time spent on phone calls, emails, and driving to and from the mortgage broker's office in Oakville. My name was on every piece of that file. My credit, my employment history, my liability. My brother, who is 4 years older than me, who lives 20 minutes away from our parents, who works from home, contributed to this process by occasionally asking my mother how it was going. He had not offered to help with the paperwork. He does not have a co-signing credit profile that would have been useful anyway. But he also never asked. He had not offered to drive my parents to any of their appointments. He had not offered anything, actually, except an opinion delivered to my mother and then relayed to me that I was taking too long and that the process should have been finished months ago. That opinion was delivered in October. I found out about it in November, when my mother mentioned it in a way that suggested she half agreed. I didn't say anything then. I just noted it. In December, there was a family dinner at my parents' house. My brother's wife, I'll call her my sister-in-law, made a comment at the table about how lucky my parents were to have someone helping them, said in a tone that made helping sound vaguely like an accusation. Like, maybe I was over-involved. Like maybe the whole thing was somehow about me, not about them. I let it go. In January, my mother called me and said that my brother felt I should step back from some of the communication with the broker because it was stressful for everyone. I asked what that meant. She said he thought I was being too controlling about the process. I asked her, calmly, I thought. Whether she wanted me to step back, and whether she understood that if I stepped back, the file would stall because no one else was managing it. She said she just wanted everyone to get along. I said okay. I stayed in the file. I kept managing it. 3 weeks later, standing in the Service Ontario parking lot with my phone face down, I had a choice to make. I sat with it for about 20 minutes after I finished my errand inside. I drove to a Tim Hortons on the way home. I ordered a medium coffee and a maple dip, and I sat in a corner booth, and I thought about it very carefully. The text said, "Please don't reach out to any of us." My brother had written any of us. He had included my parents in that. He had written it as though he spoke for all of them. He had written it as though my parents had agreed. I called my mother. She picked up on the second ring. I said, "Did you know he was sending that?" She was quiet for a second. Then she said, "We all talked, and we think it would be good for the family if you gave us some space for a little while." I said, "I need you to understand something. I am 3 weeks away from signing the final paperwork on your mortgage. If I withdraw from the file now, the application closes. You would need to start over with a new cosigner, which you don't have, or qualify on your own, which the lender has already told us is not possible at the rate you're locked into. Do you understand that?" She said, "We can figure that out." I said, "Okay." And then I called the mortgage broker. Her name was, I'll just call her my broker. She had been extremely patient with us for 6 months. I told her that due to a family situation, I needed to withdraw from the cosigner application. I asked her what that meant for the file. She walked me through it in the kind of measured professional voice that people use when they are trying very hard not to react to what they are hearing. The applications would close. My parents would need a new cosigner and restart from the beginning, or find a new cosigner. Given where the renewal deadline was sitting, there was very little room. I thanked her. I said I was sorry for the inconvenience. She said she hoped everything was okay. I went home. I made dinner. I watched something forgettable on TV. I slept fine, which surprised me slightly. The first call came at 7:43 the next morning. It was my mother. I didn't answer. She called again at 7:51. Then at 8:04. My brother called at 8:17. Then my sister-in-law, which was so unusual it almost made me laugh. She had not called me directly in probably 3 years. My mother again at 8:30. I turned my phone on silent and went to work. By the time I checked it at lunch, I had 31 missed calls. I want to tell you that I felt satisfied in that moment, some clean sense of justice delivered. But it was more complicated than that. I felt tired. I felt something that was close to grief but wasn't quite. The way you feel when something you hoped wouldn't happen turns out to have been exactly as inevitable as you feared. I texted my mother. "You said you needed space. I'm giving it to you. The broker has the file closure information. I hope you can find a solution that works." She called back immediately. I let it go to voicemail. The voicemail was 4 minutes long. I listened to it once. She was crying. She was saying my name the way she did when I was small and in trouble, this particular cadence that I used to respond to, automatically, like a reflex. She said they hadn't understood what they were doing. She said my brother hadn't explained it to them properly. She said she needed me to call the broker back and fix it. My brother left a voicemail about an hour later. His was shorter and less crying and more. I don't know how to describe it exactly. It was the voice of a person who is angry about being caught, which is different from the voice of a person who is sorry. He said I was being childish. He said I was punishing the family over a misunderstanding. He said this wasn't what Anyon wanted. I noticed he did not say he was sorry. I noticed that pretty clearly. By the end of the day, I had 47 missed calls. I know because I counted. On the third day, A number I didn't recognize called twice in the morning. I answered the second one because I thought it might be something work-related. It was my sister-in-law calling from a different phone. I almost said something about that, but I didn't. She said she wanted to explain that things had been really tense in the family and that my brother hadn't meant for the text to come out the way it did. I asked her what he had meant for it to say. She said he just needed some distance from the dynamic. I asked what dynamic she meant. She got quieter and said she thought I knew what she meant. I said I wasn't sure I did. I said if she wanted to explain specifically what I had done that led to the decision to cut contact with me in the middle of an active mortgage process. I was happy to hear it. She said that wasn't a productive way to look at it. I said I agreed that it probably wasn't productive, and that I hoped they found a solution. Then I said goodbye and hung up. The day after that, my brother called from his own phone, not a blocked number, which felt like a gesture of some kind. I let it ring. He called 3 more times that afternoon. Then my mother called from what I recognized as my aunt's number. My aunt, who lives in Scarborough, who had nothing to do with any of this, which told me they were pulling in backup. My aunt left her own voicemail, a gentle one, asking me to please call my mother back because my mother was very upset. I called my aunt. I explained, briefly and without a lot of editorializing, what had happened. The mortgage, the timeline, the text, the space request. She was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "Oh, Beh," which is a Tagalog expression that does not translate perfectly but means something like, "Of course this happened. And also what a mess. And also I see you." That was the most I had felt like crying in the entire week. By day 5, the calls were slowing down. 53 total, I think, by the time I stopped counting. My mother sent a long text message that night. She said she loved me. She said she hadn't understood what the mortgage situation meant. She said my brother had told her that there would be other options and she had believed him. She said she was sorry. It was the first actual apology in the whole sequence of events. I read it 3 times. Then I called my mortgage broker back. Not because the apology fixed anything. Exactly. Because my parents had lived in that house for 30 years. Because my father had planted a garden in the backyard that he tended like it was something sacred. Because I was angry at my brother and not at them. And those were different things. Even if they had gotten tangled together. I told the broker I was reconsidering. She was gracious about it in the way only someone who has dealt with a lot of family dynamics professionally can be. We talked through what reconsideration would look like at this stage of the file. It was manageable. It would cost another 2 weeks and some additional paperwork. I said I could manage that. What I did not do was call my brother. He called me twice more over the following week, and I let both of those go. He texted once. "I hear you're back on the file. Thank you." 2 sentences. No context, no apology, nothing that acknowledged what had happened. I didn't respond. The final signing was on a Friday in March. I drove to the lawyer's office on a street near downtown Mississauga, the kind of office with dark wood paneling and a receptionist who offered me water and a pen with a firm logo on it. The lawyer was efficient and kind. My parents were not there. The signing didn't require them to be, at that stage. I sat in a leather chair across from a woman I had never met, and I signed my name on a document that secured my parents' home for the next 5 years. My name, my credit, my liability, my signature. There was no one there to see it happen except the lawyer and her assistant. No one brought flowers or said thank you or even knew. At that exact moment that it was done, the lawyer handed me my copy of the documents in a manila envelope. I drove home in afternoon traffic on the 4001, which was doing what the 401 always does, which is make you feel like you will be on it forever. I called my mother when I got home. I told her it was done. She started crying almost immediately. She said thank you so many times I lost count. She said she was sorry again. And this time it sounded like she meant it in a way that had more weight to it. The kind of sorry that has had time to settle into something real. I said it was okay. I think part of it actually was. My brother called that evening. I picked up. He said congratulations, which was a strange thing to say. And he seemed to know it was strange after he said it. There was a pause. Then he said, I should have said something sooner. Not, I'm sorry. Not, I was wrong. Just, I should have said something sooner. I said, yeah, you should have. And then I let the silence sit there between us for a moment. Because I had earned that. And because some things don't need to be filled in right away. The mortgage went through at a rate my parents could actually manage. My father's garden came back in April, same as it always does. My mother sent me a photo of the first tulips. She always plants tulips along the front walk, and wrote underneath it, because of you. I saved that photo. I still have it. My brother and I are not the same as we were before. I'm not sure we'll get back to whatever we were. Maybe that's the thing I'm still working out. Some things you absorb for people, some weight you carry because the alternative is watching them lose what they built. And the people you carried it for don't always understand what it cost. Not right away. Maybe not ever. But the house is still there. My name is on a document inside a filing cabinet that says so. That's enough.